Hello, this is Dale Matthews. It's Inside News, and Mike and I are ready to begin. You're ready to begin, Mike?
Yes, I'm ready to begin. Although begin doing what, I'm not quite sure.
That's because we were supposed to have Dan DeYoung on tonight. In fact, we had promoted the heck out of it because, the heck out of it. Sorry about that, Keith. Because Lily Morgan was on for the second time on Monday, and then Bill Hunker was on for the second time. These are as commissioner candidates in the general election coming up in November, and then this was the opportunity for Dan DeYoung. Instead, we're just pulling back to the nuts and bolts of everyday government, and we're going to talk.
I was wondering what that was.
Right. Yeah. You could be the nut, I'll be the bolt. There's so much to talk about. And starting with the meeting that happened last night. Now, we're going to be playing excerpts from that meeting tomorrow night for you. The meeting that happened last night, which is one of Cheryl's 4 meetings about marijuana regulations. Why are we doing this? I don't think that's the official title.
Yes.
And it was held out in Williams, which is a great place to start. And I was really surprised. The Daily Courier even got the headline right. It was unbelievable to me that the Daily Courier's assessment of the situation at that meeting seems to me to be quite correct. Mike?
Okay. Well, that's good that they. Is it the broken clock syndrome, or did they just happen to stumble upon it there?
We're critical of local media, local government, and ourselves, and you too. You could be doing more to help me, probably. But when they get it right, including the commissioners and the Courier, one should say so, in my opinion. And the basic idea behind their headline was that, and on the front page above the fold, that the people of Williams basically said to the commissioners, why are you putting extra rules on us? I mean, the state is already doing it for marijuana rules. Why would the commissioners be motivated to put extra rules on it that the state doesn't even ask? Mike?
Listen, this is it's number one on Mike's rules for commissioners. Is number one, a proposal takes place. I mean, the very first thing that you ask when a proposal takes place is, why are we doing this?
Yes.
And if you don't have a good answer for that, ixnay. It's silly. And I think that if asked in advance, most people would say, I'm not interested in you further regulating me. I would like less of that type of action from you. How can you make my life better, not worse?
Who are the people besides government who are advocating for more rules and regulations on everything? It's a mystery to me.
Yeah, well, I have an idea how these things get started. Somebody gets mad at their neighbor because their neighbor's house looks junky, and then they want to propose a bunch of ordinances.
That's Cheryl Walker. She actually said it. She admitted that the reason she came up with those junk ordinances was she was upset with her neighbor. She did.
Yeah. So. People wanting to have some power over other people. Where that ends up biting you, though, is that, even people who are lapdogs to government ultimately can get bit by it because, the more that you want government to be, the tyrant, and do all the things that you want it to do, sooner or later, it's going to come after you, too.
But the way the game played is if you're one of those bootlicker kind of people, then all you need to do is go to the commissioners yourself, and you will get a personal exclusion from that rule.
Oh, is that how it works? I wish I'd known that earlier, because I've got a list.
That's not the way that it usually works? I mean, you watch some of the stuff.
I was not aware.
this whole $77,000 contract with the water and all of. I mean, who can just walk in the door, make a one-time announcement of something, and then have everybody believe you, and then a contract for 5 years? I mean, none of that made any sense, except if you believe that there was some kind of behind the scenes maneuvering to make all this happen. And that the only part that we saw was the part that plays out in public, even though it was in the little back room. It otherwise really insane.
You know what? Listen, I think there are a large number of people that believe in the benevolence of government. And I don't really believe that because, once you're inside government, you see how all of that benefits you. You may have some good feelings and you want to do good works with other people's money, but that never ever works right. I mean, it's very, very rare. I mean, look at even some of these charities. Sometimes 70-80% of what you give to them goes to administrating the whole charity thing, and then 20% goes to the actual end user there. And so
one of my favorite examples is this thing about the number of groups that have gotten together to keep people's homes safe from fire. And that one of the results was, with a grant that came in, they actually made, with that money, your money, the money could have been spent on something else. They actually made a tabletop demonstration under glass where you could go and see a little sample community with little trees and little people and little homes. And it was supposed to indicate to you, to first graders, to kindergarten students, what a community looks like. And the way you'd like to keep it, it wasn't on fire. I mean, if the whole thing had a constant fire going, I might be interested in looking at it, but that's not what it was. And little homes and little gardens and stuff. Why are we spending money on that?
Yeah, utopian vision.
What a waste.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That type of thing. Well, I don't know. Listen, if everybody is on board with, a given set of rules, I see no issue with it. Homeowners associations are one of those things, although I hate homeowners associations and I will not, be under them. Some people like this regimented thing. They like everybody's, garbage can to be in by 10 a.m. And, the lawns are cut just this way. We have certain colors that we want on the houses. Don't fly your flag more than so many days, or here's the days you can fly your flag, whatever. A lot of people like that.
Have a really big billboard sign when you're running for government, right? Even though it's within the rules that has to be cut back, and we're certainly not going to allow that ever again.
Listen, I have no problem with that billboard, the one that you're specifically referring to. You know what? Whatever. I mean, that's that person's private property there. If there's some law or something that everybody else in the community is somehow held to that they're violating, that's a different story. But as I was saying about homeowners associations, most people that move into those, if you're smart, you read the CC&Rs before you go into a community like that, so you know what to expect. And you go, yeah, those are the kind of rules that I want. There's nothing wrong with that, although I find that the homeowners associations to be every bit as dictatorial as local governments. But I'm totally fine with that sort of thing because you have inflicted it upon yourself, this sort of thing where we're just sitting here minding our own business and they're throwing things at us that are going to, impact our own bottom line financially. And, because I moved here thinking that I knew what to expect. And now they keep wanting to, bump the ante on me here.
One of the questions that was asked at this marijuana town hall, and I say this almost every show, it's not because Mike and I are smoking marijuana every day, although that might explain some behavior.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
No, it's but one of the questions that was asked there and was asked during the junk ordinances has been asked during other things is why are the commissioners why do they keep telling you, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry, we're just gathering information, we haven't made up our mind about what we're going to do, there's no reason for you to have any concern at all. You've heard this. There's no
on a number of occasions
concerned at all about the fact that we're just gathering information about what kind of sauce to put on your children after we've roasted them.
Yeah.
That's all we're doing.
This is a very, very common thing with them. And they can be, and they object to your input.
Yes.
On some particular idea that they have because it's only in the forming stages. Well, that's when you need to comment on something. That's when, while it's still being formed, you don't wait for the thing to be a finished product, because when it's a finished product, they're going to be very resistant to change on their beautiful finished marble statue. The time to put your touches on that statue is in the formative stages, not at the end of the thing. But the thing is that just cements the notion that we all pretty much understand, is that these people want to govern without public input. And that's pretty much.
Well, how many times, honestly now, can any come to mind, how many times have you seen the commissioners gathering information and will eventually decide whether or not we're going to go with this, and then have them say, oh, we gathered information and we decided not to try to influence, the way the community is run. We're not going to have any regulations at all. I can't think of it.
I don't remember that ever happening.
Well, one example that comes close is when they went to the Leipzig meeting. I'm not going to continue telling you what that means. You already know. You watched the show. When they went to the Leipzig meeting and our representatives in Salem refused to sign on to the program. Now we don't hear any references to that anymore. But that wasn't because the commissioners had gathered enough information to decide that the population or whatever didn't want it. It was because they couldn't find any allies in Salem. Not even our own reps wanted to have any part of this, and told them it was a really bad idea. So,
well, I wonder what our reps are how they're going to react to what's an obvious plan. I mean, it's an easy telegraph to read here. Going forward, they have a plan to throw another levy at us, and when and if that fails, they immediately institute this state of emergency and bring in the governor. I would wonder, what Carl Wilson thinks of that scenario.
Well, and Carl Wilson,
to me, it seems
Carl Wilson has always been a levy supporter. So how far out of this mainstream? How far out of the get on board? Where's he going to step off of this train?
Well, and I mean, that's really the question. Is he going to still be on? I understand that will probably be in support of the levy, which is inevitably coming January 2017. But is he the thing is they're going to use as the lever that if you don't pass this, the jail closes.
Yeah, jail.
That Armageddon takes place. And the only possible thing that can happen after that, if you don't pass the levy, is the governor is coming in. Well, Carl Wilson and somewhat less, sternly, the other representatives all indicated that they don't like this. This thing's a loser. This thing's a bad idea. And Carl Wilson was holding up the contract saying, you don't want this. This is full of unknowns, ambiguities here. You don't know what you're going to get. The state government is going to come down here. They're going to set up an entity of control in this county, and you don't know when you're going to be able to get rid of that, if you're going to be able to get rid of that. And I understand that also is a scare tactic that the commissioners might like going forward. But would he be on board with that sort of tactic? Would he be on board with that being the ultimate result? Because we know he doesn't like it.
The other thing that needs to be, well, before I talk about the other thing, just now occurred to me something that would be a position that the city council, the Grants Pass City Council, always try to be careful, Grants Pass City Council would say is, we thought about it and we're no longer going to buy any jail beds in the jail. That would put extra pressure on this situation. Not trying to give them ideas, but that would put extra pressure on the situation, saying, look, not even Grants Pass City is not going to be part of this anymore. Oh, now we really need to close the jail, and we need to close it by 5 p.m. today.
Okay, right. But you know what? I think that if you're going to do that, you then also have to get a little deeper into my analysis of who should be paying for this here. Because if the city's going to back out, I think the $1 million that they're throwing in is just getting a little bit closer to what they should be paying for the jail function, because of the 80-20 thing, 80-15, 85-15 thing that we've been talking about. I think it's important to get into that, because there's, sometimes people in the county blame the city, say you guys aren't paying your fair share, and then vice versa, the people in the city blame the people in the county. Well, you know what? There's a truth to this here, and the cursory examination that I've given it just sort of indicates that the city is the one that should be kicking in a little bit more money towards this thing, because 80 to 85% of the crime is coming from the city, and it's not people from the county marauding in the city, after hours.
Well, let's suppose that it was. This is not going to be a popular conversation topic. Let's suppose that it really was true, that people were coming in from the county, where they live in the county, and they were marauding inside the city as
where there's a fully funded law enforcement entity, whereas they're coming from the county where there is none. So where's the logic there? Right.
Shouldn't they be robbing their
yes.
neighbor? Well, shouldn't
I'd say the city people are going out into the county and doing stuff. Yeah.
Shouldn't Cave Junction people drive a little bit further over to Merlin and rob them, and vice versa, rather than stopping in Grants Pass where they have full?
Absolutely.
Well, okay. All right. So
absolutely.
Following the logic that the United States government has used for generations, shouldn't we send National Guard people over to some other country to influence what's going on there? Because eventually it'll end up here. If that's the case, and that's the kind of logic that we've been using, then shouldn't, this is the part where people are going to hate this, if that logic makes any sense at all, shouldn't Grants Pass City Police expand out to at least the urban growth boundary and maybe a little further to keep Grants Pass City residents more and more safe by taking that full funding that they have for police and
maybe they should build a wall and make the people in the county pay for it.
I mean, if they've got the police officers, maybe they should say, hey, stand aside there, Sheriff. We're going to police the whole dang thing because our residents are the only ones being affected by crime in this county.
Yeah. No, listen, real analysis. Right. Listen, a real analysis needs to take place, and that's the problem, is that they don't like real analysis when it comes to these campaigns. It's all anecdotes, it's all feelings, it's all emotions, and the problem, the reason why it never gets to real analysis is because they want more of your money, and there's only one way to get that, and that's from you voluntarily ponying up a tax increase. If there was some other means that they were pursuing, their methods would probably be a lot more logical. But now it's all anecdotes and scare tactics and things of that nature. So,
well, we do on this show, we do pattern analysis. We try to do some prediction of what's going to happen next. And one of the patterns that we've seen is here the commissioners, despite the fact that over a year ago, they had the parks director come in. It sounds like it's unrelated, but it is related. Parks director come in and said, listen, the reason that people don't want to park in the main parking lot of the park. I'm sorry. The reason they don't want to be there, too many same words. It's like Native Americans up in Alaska that have 35 words for snow, and we just have one. The reason that they don't want to park in the parking lot of the park is that there's thievery going on there. And they feel that even if they have a park pass, said the parks director, much to the surprise and chagrin of the county commissioners, that it was safer to park on the street than in the parking lot of the park.
Interesting.
Now, fortunately, we were in the back room. We taped that, and we've put that up now as a video for you to see. Now, it flies in the face of the commissioner saying, oh, it's safer to park in the parking lot. Apparently not. But, enough time has gone by that everybody forgets that except for Mike and I. Okay. And then we put that up. But why would they keep pressing for this? Because it means money. And why would they go to this meeting in Williams and try to impose this 3% tax when they don't know what they're going to do with the money? They don't know. They've already confessed they have no idea what they're going to do with the money. What have they done to earn it? It's because the way that all of these things are related, it brings in money. They want to bring in money. We keep saying, no, we're not going to give you any money. They keep insisting, and they will look for, they're so creative. They're creative on this, but not in funding the sheriff. They will look for any way that they can to keep money flowing in that they have some control over. Am I wrong?
No, that's a pretty solid analysis, I'd say.
So maybe Mike and I both need analysis, but I think that what's happening here is that anytime you come up with something where it looks like it's going to be more money in control of county government, that they're going to go for it. Now, they're going to add on a third park now coming up Wednesday, and they want to ban parking on the streets near the park because, as they said in that earlier meeting, and as they mentioned very briefly, and then on to the next subject, what they're concerned about is not the safety of the people. Give me a break. They're not thinking about the safety of the children. They're concerned because people don't want to park in that parking lot. They would rather avoid the fee by parking on the street. And their original idea was to declare that the street was a park.
Okay. So in the midst of a law enforcement fiscal emergency, who is going to be the enforcer on all of this?
That's a really good question. That's the question they asked the first go around. Who can possibly do this? And apparently they had talked with the sheriff, who said, I have no way to do anything about this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when people are having their houses broken into up in Wolf Creek, there'll be no, crying baby siren to go up there because these guys will be writing tickets outside of a county park somewhere.
So this is, to me, the most interesting part of this that nobody's talking about. Remember with the, you'll be glad you watched this show just for this next little section. Remember when Cheryl Walker came out with her idea for junk ordinances, and what was going to end up was a kind of a police.
I know where you're going.
A kind of a police force that was. To tell them about that, about what was
all of the money that came in from any sort of fine impact on the community would just barely be enough to fund the operation itself. So, and the funny thing is when you were leading into this, I was thinking that that's exactly what must, be in the works for this parking enforcement thing. It would just create this little unit that took in enough money to fund itself, and that's it.
Right. And so it won't be it already. I mean, they've already taken action. I mean, it happened like this, right? Oh, it's safety, so we got to do it. It's an emergency situation, and it's suddenly cropped up after all this time of parking on the street. Suddenly, it's a crisis situation. As Cheryl Walker pointed out, there's been lots of near misses. Wait a minute, where do you find out about these near misses, Miss Walker?
Oh, it's the same people that send her emails saying that they should do things that they're never willing to come to the weekly business session and talk about themselves.
Oh, maybe the sheriff is keeping a special computerized list, cross-reference of near misses in the community, and not of crime, just near misses. Okay, so
it's the Big Brother drones. That's how they're tracking all that. Just like
and that's what they wanted from Manor Development is Big Brother drones. And by the way, Larry Graves had said during that whole thing, the airport's manager, that one of the ways those drones could be used is to monitor agricultural growth, especially in the Illinois Valley. Oh, I mean strawberries?
Yeah.
The same strawberries that have been where the juice has been
right. Well,
as tobacco.
Yes, there's listen. One thing that's going to be big, and we haven't seen it yet, but we will see it ultimately, is that there's going to be a whole nother bureaucracy of state government, and we can liken them to revenuers of the 1930s, who would go around looking for moonshine operations to shut them down. And it wasn't because they cared so much that people were being demoralized with alcohol, so much as it was that they were missing out on the tax money from all of that stuff. So
it's revenue.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And with I don't want to get too
and that's a big aspect when you're talking about 17 to 20% on all of the marijuana that's being sold from this area. They're going to want to crack down on the black market stuff.
Here's the thing to watch for. I want to get to this private police force in a moment, because it won't be the sheriff's department. It will be Parks Department police.
Gotcha. Yeah. What if they'll be armed?
County commissioners. But the thing I think that you should be looking for, and this is really looking into the future, is when the revenuers were out there, there was an interesting thing that grew up around that whole deal of prohibition that we're enjoying today. And no, I don't mean single malt liquor. What I'm talking about is NASCAR. We've talked about this before. They souped up cars so that they could drive faster than the local police. All they need to do is get across the state line. And it started this whole thing with NASCAR and why we have that today. Well, what will be the thing that, because people are creative, especially when there's money involved, especially when they're trying to avoid the government.
I see where you're going. Well, the problem is that, back then they had cars that pretty much outclassed the cops. But you know what? All of that stuff is available to cops now. Plus, they have helicopters and drones and GPS tracking technology and spike strips and all of this stuff's going to make it a whole lot harder to start the next moonshine runner click there.
Something creative is going to come out of this big money. These people who are not spending all their time imbibing their own product. Something creative is going to come out of them, and they may have to do something about the money aspect, because right now it's about cash.
Oh yeah.
Putting all of us in this really last night the treasurer was at this meeting in Williams, and we weren't supposed to ask questions of the treasurer. She was just sitting there, yes to whatever it was the commissioners were saying. But I find it fascinating that she said, and we played for you one of the tapes, that the county government here in Josephine County is going to need, it's a necessity that the county government get involved with and she said it, with the laundering of money.
Right. Yeah.
Drug money launderers.
The problem that we have is that all of the states that have passed marijuana legalization legislation, they're running afoul of the federal government, because with the federal government still, classifies it as a, did they say it's a class 1 drug? I think they do.
It's class 1. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's illegal. And so therefore anything connected to any revenue connected with that is also illegal money. And if you place it in a bank, the feds have the right to seize it.
Yes, so, they do.
I don't know where these people are, speaking of creativity, and I'm not trying to plant any seeds here, but I think that, there may be some people that are, watching these people and trying to figure out where they're keeping their money so that they can, hit them in the middle of the night or something.
Maybe what they can do is have trained deer that will jump over the fence, eat all of it, and then fly away. No, that analogy doesn't work very well. That's about hemp.
Or they could spray it with paraquat.
Yes, that's what. Yes, well, then we can. Oh no, I don't even want to go down that road. Look, getting back to the private police force. So what the county commissioners decided, and because Wally Hicks has told them they can do this, he's our elected legal counsel. Mm-hmm. They've come up with the idea that they don't even have to deputize the park police. The park police are supposed to stay inside the park. Let's think about this just for a second. Now they can leave the park because they decided not to turn the streets into little parks, right? It's just a county street. The park police are going to leave the park and then start ticketing cars on the street. Now, wait a minute. Who gives them the authority to ticket cars anywhere? Can they go out 5 miles? How far outside the park do they have jurisdiction? And what happens when the very first person says, hey, I reject this ticket altogether. This was given to me by a park policeman. What the heck is that? Yeah. They have no reason to give a park policeman or a park, not even policeman. They don't have badges, right? We don't need no stinking badges. And so why am I being given... Would it be okay with you if the guards inside the courthouse were to leave the courtroom and walk along the streets ticketing cars?
I don't know that I necessarily object to any of that. I just think that I don't think that. I think this is an ill-conceived idea. I think they think it's going to generate revenue.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think we all know that, the kind of stuff that they do doesn't necessarily generate revenue. It will probably just end up supporting itself. If that, unfortunately, it's a government operation and they don't know how to do stuff.
Well, they're really interested. One of the things Cheryl Walker, and tomorrow night we'll play excerpts. One of the things Cheryl Walker says, I just wanted to assure you all, I am not interested in having ordinances. Cheryl Walker is saying she's not interested in ordinances. Cheryl Walker lives and breathes for ordinances. It's their number one preoccupation, it seems, as a county commissioner, is having new ordinances. Even if the people are 80% against them, she still went to the wall with this. Mm-hmm. There's something about ordinances that really strikes her fancy. Mm-hmm. I don't even like the thought of something striking her fancy. There's something unsanitary about that whole thing. But what I will say to you is that this again borders on the big lie. It really does, because that's just not true, and we've seen it time and again that these commissioners, especially, is it that they're shopping for their legacy still? Is there's just this thing where Cheryl Walker and Keith Eck feel that this is the whole reason to be a commissioner, is to exercise some kind of influence over people, even if it doesn't mean any money at all?
Right, especially for Cheryl, because she knows she's going out the door in January. Keith doesn't necessarily know that just yet. So she has to be thinking of what her impact is going to be on the county, in her last year,
Well,
in her last 6 months.
They also constantly say, besides the one, the earlier one we talked about, is don't get involved in discussing this now because it's still in the concept stage and it doesn't do any good. The timing is all wrong to even discuss this with you in the audience, because you're getting worked up about nothing because we haven't made up our mind about what to do. Well, after they made up their mind, which they already have, we already know they already have made up their mind. They keep saying we haven't, but never seen them turn around before. The other thing that they say all the time is, nope, it's not going to come to me. Speak a little bit, Mike, and
that's all they say. They only say that one thing. It's getting old.
Right. It's nope. I put it out there a little too far, but it'll come back to me later.
That's what happens.
Does that ever happen to you? See,
yes, from time to time, yes.
This is what Keith Heck should have said in that little back room when he was saying that the employees were little moles that sneak around and do lesser services. He should have just said, hey, everybody does that every once in a while and say something they don't really mean. He did really mean it. Cheryl Walker even agreed that they are little moles. How do you like that? She didn't bring up that sneak around, but that's all that he needed to do. Instead, he decided what he needed to do was accuse Mike and I of doctoring the videotape. Wow. That was a big mistake. It was a big mistake. Yeah. So, and another thing that's been happening recently, just another trend, is they're continuing to insist that this camera that we're pointing at them is dangerous. It is dangerous to them, but not in a physical way. And that it needs to be curtailed. It needs to be stopped. It needs to be regulated, Mike. We're out of control journalists, out of control. What is an in-control journalist?
Yeah, you know what? And I am a little bit concerned about that, especially, in the future here when we're going to have 2 new commissioners. And if the commissioners continue to employ the same tactics as the old commissioners did, then we can expect more of this blocking of transparency, the growing opacity of government, because we've seen what the commissioners say when you ask them, why don't we use the road dollars for the sheriff? They all have the same pat answer for that. And there are certain candidates that also give that same answer, which leads me to believe that we can expect the same from them as we have from the existing commissioners. And that really bothers me, especially considering I know that the people that want that are not the makeup of the electorate here.
Well, here's one of the reasons not to come on our show. Because if you're going to come on our show as a county commissioner candidate and you're going to say, oh, well, I wouldn't do that. Oh, and then you go into detail about how you're not going to do that. Well, this record that's on YouTube, that's on the internet, is going to last forever. And all that anybody will have to do, and we won't even need.
It's permanent, Dale? Is it permanent?
No,
as a permanent record.
No such thing as permanent, Mike. Haven't you learned?
Be there on the internet as the sun is supernovaing. Boy, wow. Putting an ing on the end of that just screwed up the whole thing. As the sun goes supernova and absorbs the earth. That is when it will. Well, no, because permanent is beyond that, because the rest of the universe goes on, right?
That's what the judge said.
All right. Well, I guess it's not permanent then.
So the city is certainly not fallen asleep while we've been involved with all this stuff with the county commissioners. And one of the things that they decided to get into was this bit about the signs. Now, I wasn't overly upset, a little bit with a huge compilation of signs, but it was within the law. And one of the things that Darren Fowler said, the mayor of Grants Pass, was, this thing it's too much, he had indicated that it was a blight on the community, and that it was making, I have to paraphrase because I don't have his exact quote, but that it was making this a less pleasant place to live.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Now, this billboard-looking thing that was at Parkway and M Street, obviously it was big, but it wasn't right up next to the street where you were having trouble seeing around it or something. It was stepped back a little bit, and it was quite impressive, and it was completely within the rules. So what does the city council have to do? They have to make new rules.
Mm.
But the thing that nobody's been talking about, and we're the first ones to bring this up that I know of, unless you've seen it on Facebook, Mike, the thing that nobody's talking about is Darren Fowler said, well, this was an unfair advantage by a couple of people who came up with a new idea, Yahoo, okay, and we need to put an end to that because we need to make new regulations that make it impossible to do that. But and he said it would be a unnecessary financial burden on the candidates that are going to be in the November election. Who is one of the people that's going to be in the November election? Mike Jones.
One of the people. Do I just have to name one? Keith Heck.
Darren Fowler.
Oh yes, I guess he is. That's right. But
and that would be an unnecessary. So he's pushing.
So who are the people complaining about this?
He's pushing for a new rule. They'll make it less expensive for him to compete for attention.
Yeah, but I mean, where's the public outcry about this? Maybe the same people that are emailing Cheryl Walker are sending emails to Darren Fowler as well.
That were stopping her in the supermarket, begging her not to have a voter's.
Yes, yeah, those are the people. Yes.
Yeah, 1,000.
Yeah, I don't know, you know what? Maybe the city residents feel a little bit different about this. I drive by Parkway and maybe a couple of times a week. For people that are doing it 3-4 times a day, maybe it's a different thing. I don't know. That's up to you guys.
Don't like the whole election season. You may recall way back in the dim, dark history, we used to be able to go to the growers market, and on that section that just leads into it, people could put political signs. It only happened every once in a while, a couple of times a year maximum, or every 2 years or whatever. And I hate walking through the gauntlet. Then just, don't pay attention as they're walking by. Now, you are going to have people like Mark Seligman who would sometimes come up to people and like, hey, you got to listen to me. Okay, well, maybe not physically grabbing them, but here. And you just, just relax, just walk on by.
It reminds me of that scene in Airplane where the guy's walking through the airport and Hare Krishna comes up to him, the Scientologist, and all these other people, and he's throwing these people off, hitting them in the face. Yes,
right.
Running the gauntlet. Yeah.
Okay, so it is one of the prices that Americans pay to have a system where you get a chance to vote for things. I personally find it less offensive than the way they do things in North Korea, for example, where, that's just not necessary.
Yeah.
Which then also leads
That's
me...
That's very efficient, though.
Yes, well, efficiency is the enemy of democracy. It also leads me to the idea of this where we're having people saying, well, 98% say yes, or 99% efficiency, or a 99.9% efficiency. The only place where you see those kinds of numbers where it shouldn't make you wonder are places like North Korea, right? Where 98% of the 100% of the people are voting for Kim Jong whoever. And so anytime that you hear that from government, why it's always the most efficient system, why 98% of the people love this, give me a break.
Yeah, I can't. I don't. That's probably never happened in America. There's always going to be somebody that doesn't like what you're doing,
right?
And maybe that's good. I don't know.
Well, I think I mentioned that I ran into one of the 20% the other day. We've often said on the show that there's 20% of the people who will back somebody. I mean, even it may be even the case for Mike and I, that there's 20% of the people who would think that what we're saying is the truth, even without seeing the videotape. I don't think you should do that, but I do believe that you can trust. And we say there is a videotape. We have played this. Other people have seen it. And despite what Wally Hicks, our elected legal counsel, might say, it actually does exist. And we played it last night. So I ran into one of these fellows, and I'm going to play back some tape for you in a couple of days to identify this guy. And it was one of those situations where the other side runs out of arguments. They run out of arguments. This has happened with Jan Ford. It happened with this guy, and I can't remember his name. And it started off where I had left the weekly business session, and there was a lady who had spoken who was deaf. And so I signed to her. I made a mistake. I meant to sign pretty girl because she was a pretty girl. And she liked that. But when I first did it, I just did this. And she looks at me like, what? Because I just signed girl. She's looking at me like, why are you doing that? Right?
Yes. So, I see that you're a girl. Yeah.
Good for you. That's a little mysterious there, Mr. Matthews. And so later on, I said, sorry, pretty girl. And she beamed, okay, because when you try to, unlike most of the French, when you try to say something in sign language as opposed to in French, they actually appreciate that. Okay, all right. So she really did. And so afterwards, I went out with her and her husband. Not went out with her, but we left the ambassador. And I said, it was great to see new people here. Love to have you on our show, commenting about various things you could translate for her. And that'd be cool, I think. And it was the first time I've ever seen anybody that was hearing impaired, that was deaf. She was deaf. With a translator telling everybody what she's trying to say. It was cool. There's a point to this story.
And we also ought to have, the little oval in the upper corner with Garrett Morris in it.
With Garrett Morris. Headlines.
Yes.
That's right.
For the hard of hearing, I mean, they're left out. They're neither deaf nor, hearing people. Yes.
Right. So then there was another fellow who, and I routinely do this, not just for this show, who said some things that I just totally disagreed with, but he was new. And he said them in a real common sense way. I just happened to disagree with him. I'd love it if our local politics was like this, where you have people to say something. They're not lying to you. They just have a different point of view. Okay. I personally find Larry Ford to be pretty much like that. He states his positions clearly. I disagree with him almost all the time, but he says them in a common sense way. He lists his reasons, and he's fairly reasonable about the whole presentation.
I agree.
Cool. Okay. And he doesn't have videotape to back him up, but he doesn't talk about things where you need videotape. We do. And so that's cool. So I went up to this other guy and I said, hey, really glad to see new people here. It is your first time. He says, yeah, it is. So you should come back and say that. And he says, well, you didn't really agree with me. I said, no, I didn't. But it's great to have different points of view here. It's cool. It's fine. Good. I think you should change your point of view, but you stated it very clearly. That's great. That's what we need more of. So then there was this guy that, I'm sorry, I don't know his name, a fairly large guy that we've seen before speak. And he had said, he made a little speech about how that the people who feel that we have a bad county, a couple of people do like this toward me, they have no ideas and they don't share any of their solutions and they just don't have any ideas and there are no solutions at all. Yeah. So when it was done, I went up to him and I said, do you ever get a chance to watch our show? I was just like this. I wasn't like that. I said, do you ever get a chance to watch our show? And he said, well, I don't watch your show, but I know that you don't have any solutions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, we've heard that before, Mike.
Yeah, we have.
I hate your show, but I never watch it. I never watch your show and I hate it. Okay. So I said, well, we do on a nightly basis talk about solutions. Okay, we do talk about solutions on a constant basis. And then he couldn't think of, it was obvious because you could see him, the gears grinding. He couldn't think of what to say in response, because I think it was fairly reasonable. If you'd watched the show, then you would see that we have solutions. I said it the way I just did. And so he said, "No, you don't." And I said, "Well, yes, we do." And I kind of laughed. And he says, "No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't." And then he got in my face, like right up to about right here, almost touching nose to nose, kind of like when Keith Heck was physically assaulted me and then lied to the police that he'd never touched me. Right? He gave a false police report. Okay, it wasn't like he beat the heck out of me, but I just stood my ground, and he was, belly to belly, which is easy for Keith to do anyway. This guy's right, and he's spitting in my face. I'm not. But, because he's so close to me, and he's yelling, "No, you don't, no, you don't, no." And he's yelling it louder and louder and louder and louder. This is the mentality of the 20%. It must be very frustrating for them, because when confronted with another way of looking at things, I don't mean to make it a confrontation, because I didn't start that way. I was very calm. And when they can't think of what to say next, like what happened with Jan Ford and this thing about this organization to which I belong, she says, "I'll clean it up." "Bullshoot." And I said, no, it's actually true. I still am. "Bullshoot, bullshoot." And then she started yelling and screaming, "Bullshoot, bullshoot, bullshoot." And so we couldn't say a word. This is the mentality of the people that are hardcore members of the 20%. They don't have arguments beyond a few words. And then once you say, "Well, what about this?" the more reasonable you are, the angrier they get.
Yeah, right. It's because they don't have any defense from against that. So
she was the one that said, "We don't have a website. We don't even have a website. This does not exist. This is the best they can do." And you saw part of this. You saw Wally Hicks, or at least heard about Wally Hicks devolving down into that. With "You don't have it on tape." And I said, "But Wally, we played it last night." No, it's not on tape. And he's just a step above this. And in between is J.J. Schofield, who got angry about the fact that we didn't have it on videotape. Well, of course we do. It's a little bit like Keith occasionally, too. Keith gets worked up. Keith Heck gets worked up. And then he'll start yelling at you stuff. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute. And what happened with this guy out in front of the ambassador? And I wasn't screaming. I just stood there, just giving him calm responses. And I said to him calmly, just like this, "Why are you yelling?" And other people around us said, "Why are you yelling?" Eventually he stopped yelling. But in one way, I take it as a bit of a personal victory. Okay, talking about myself here, that you remain calm during times like this. I did when Keith Heck was doing that too, and that you don't get into a yelling match with the person. And the more you do that, the angrier they get. And then I think, you can send us an email and say, "Dale, you're cracked about this, as you are on most things." I believe that when they overreact like this and start screaming, this guy wasn't screaming, he was yelling. Okay, Jan Ford was screaming. When they start yelling and they repeat the same phrase over and over and over and over again, then I think it makes them look foolish. And if you stand there quietly and let them expend their energy on you, that there's some moral superiority in that. That doesn't sound right, but there's.
It's certainly. I think if other people are able to observe that, it just shows who's rational. That's all.
Yeah, I like to think so. Although somebody can send us an email saying, "No, you're wrong. What you should do is something else." At least one person afterwards says, "Well, you should have, punched him or something." I said, "No, that's not what I do." I try to be rational with them. And then I think it's very interesting. I find I'm fascinated by these people, and I probably shouldn't be. This is my shortcoming, is I find it fascinating that there are people who will go as far as to say that people who question government are something like Satan worshipers. Really? Mm-hmm. Well, that's where this guy goes to church. Do they get together, not at the church, but in other places, and agree with each other that this is the right way to handle problems, is to repeat yourself and yell? Or is it just frustrating because they're not getting their point across, and they think the only way to do it is increase their volume and say the same thing over and over again?
Yes, that's too bad.
Right. Well, I think we did a pretty interesting show discussing topics, even though Dan DeYoung didn't show up, and he's got nothing to from us. But I'd like to hear him just share some of his same opinions about the same thing that Lily Morgan and Bill Hunker already did, and maybe we'll arrange that and have these fellows and women on every couple of weeks, couple of times a month, and talk about some of the real basic issues, not the stuff like, yes, I am honest. No, that's not doing us any good. What would you do in this circumstance? So, yeah, I'd like to see more of that kind of thing so that we understand who they are. They need to be careful, Mike, I think, in making commitments, because the more commitments they make now, the more they'll be held accountable in the future. Now, they're saying they want to be held accountable.
Yeah, easy to say at this point now. Yeah, I think later that will be. But the thing is that, as we know, candidates quite often will make all kinds of promises and say whatever they want or feel is expedient at the time. And, one day after election, they can be something entirely different. So
we've seen exactly that, precisely that. One day with Cheryl Walker and 2 days with, not Jim Riddle, the other guy. It's not going to come to me.
Yeah. And, that shows that those people are deceitful. They are obviously putting forth, an idea about how they want to govern that is a lie, and ultimately, they have to be harboring some sort of thinking along the lines of, I cannot tell them the truth about what I plan to do because they wouldn't vote for me.
Yes.
I'm going to do this and it's going to be for their own good, or I'm going to do this and it's going to be for the good of my cronies. That type of thinking. And I just wish that somebody would be honest and upfront ahead of time and say, yes, you know what? I realize that the majority of the people in the county do not favor property tax levies, but I'm for the property tax levy anyway. And that's what I plan to, push for once I'm elected. And you go, okay, thank you very much for laying that out. Instead, now, we have had an experience over the years of having people that say one thing, and then when they get in there, they flip the switch and there's somebody else.
Don Reed.
That's deceitful. That
guy.
Yeah. That ought to get you recalled at 6 months and a day. I
agree. Except that's just not what we do here. People have other priorities. This show is about politics, and so we can talk to you about the nuts and bolts of politics, and you put up with us, and we commiserate with you, and we try to stay informed, and your only job is to talk a bit with your neighbors every once in a while about politics until they're bored to death of hearing about it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can always send Mike emails. He's not bored to death to hear from you.
Mm-hmm.
Send it to Mike.
Yes. Mike at Mike.com.
Yes, see you guys later. Bye-bye.